Empires are forged in chaos. History, like fire, often needs chaos to burn brightest. The path to imperial glory is rarely a straight road. It is more often littered with daggers, ambition, and brothers at each other's throats. And time and again, what appears to be the twilight of a civilization is, in truth, its dawn disguised in shadow, the kindling for future glory. Before Rome reached its zenith, Caesar and Pompey drenched the Republic in blood. Augustus rose only after clashing with Mark Antony. Across the Atlantic, the United States was born of revolution, but matured through civil war. Even Britain, before it became the empire on which the sun never set, descended into the convulsions of the 17th century Civil War, a brutal clash of parliament and crown that preceded its rise as a global superpower. And so it was with the Ottomans. Before the Crescent Empire would reach its luminous height, before it would gaze triumphantly upon the domes of Constantinople, it first had to survive the bitter storm of fratricide and fragmentation. What seems, in the moment, to be the flickering end of an empire, history later sees as its furnace, the crucible where greatness is forged. Or, to put it differently, the very chaos that seems to spell doom becomes the forge of future grandeur. This storm, dear viewer, was called the Interregnum. Let us begin not in the din of battle or the shadow of betrayal, but with a family, albeit a particularly complicated one. It is the year 1402, and Sultan Bayezid I, the Thunderbolt himself, has 4 sons who will soon tear the empire apart in pursuit of a single gleaming prize, the Ottoman throne. First, there is Süleyman Çelebi, the eldest, in his early 30s. Stationed in Edirne, he's refined, diplomatic, and already dressed in the silks of rule. His court sparkles, his words flatter, and he considers himself a sultan in everything but name. He is not only the most senior by age, but also the most politically polished. And most importantly, he has with him the empire's old master key, Grand Vizier Çandarlı Ali Pasha, the towering statesman of Bayezid's reign. It is Çandarlı's presence that grants Süleyman real administrative power, bureaucratic continuity, and strategic weight. Then comes İsa Çelebi, probably in his late 20s. More reserved, scholarly perhaps, governor of Bursa, a city that once welcomed poets and philosophers. He walks the line between cunning and indecision, not yet tested by fire. Third is Musa Çelebi, the firebrand. In his mid-20s, impulsive, passionate, and military-minded. His loyalty is erratic, but his ambition burns brightly. Think of him as the cannonball no one quite knows where will land. Finally, Mehmed Çelebi, the youngest, still in his early 20s, ruling quietly from Amasya. Calm, observant, cautious. His eyes miss nothing. While his brother's posture, Mehmed plots. He is the one who sees the storm coming. As for their mothers, Ottoman chroniclers are frustratingly silent, but it is likely that Mehmed and Musa shared the same mother. A concubine of deep political intelligence, it seems, given her son's fierce presence in what follows. Part 2. The Thundercracks, Battle of Ankara. Let us pause here to appreciate a grim milestone. Among the 36 men who would wear the Ottoman crown, in more than 600 years, only one would ever fall into enemy hands. Bayezid I, the Thunderbolt, was that one. And the irony could not be deeper. For here was a man who had routed the Crusaders at Nicopolis, who struck fear into the heart of Europe, and who very nearly became the conqueror of Constantinople a full half-century before his great-great-grandson, Mehmed II, would finish the job. Yet his fate would reverse this legacy, not a conqueror, but a captive, dying in a foreign cage, watching the empire he built fracture in the dust. Captured not by some petty rival, but by Timur, the scourge of Central Asia, in a defeat that sent shockwaves through the Islamic world and beyond. And perhaps the only reason the Ottomans were not wiped from the map entirely was Timur's own gaze shifting eastward. His ambition to subdue China, the great empire of silk and thunder, pulled him away from Anatolia just as he held its heart in his hands. But let us now return to the battlefield itself, to the moment when dust and heat gave way to panic and steel. And then the storm breaks. On the dusty plains near Ankara, in the sweltering heat of July 1402, the Ottoman dream is brought to its knees, not by slow decay, but by the thunderous charge of Timur the Lame. The conqueror from the east obliterates Bayezid's forces. The Sultan himself, the once invincible thunderbolt, is taken, not because he fled, but because he didn't. True to his name, Bayezid fought until his limbs failed him, refusing to retreat, refusing to yield. He was a warrior king to the bitter end, and with his capture went not only his freedom, but the illusion of Ottoman invulnerability. It is one of those rare, spine-chilling moments in history where an empire gasps and almost dies. So, what of the sons? Süleyman, stationed in the Western Army Wing, escapes with the veteran Grand Vizier, Çamurlu Ali Pasha. He flees to Bursa, then swiftly to Edirne, establishing control over the European territories. With Çamurlu's guidance and the Edirne court infrastructure, he assumes a near-regal stance almost immediately, issuing decrees, forming treaties, and styling himself not just as a claimant, but as a functioning ruler. For a moment, it seems as if Süleyman might restore unity by sheer bureaucratic inertia. Isa, directly with Bayezid during the battle, also manages to escape. He returns to Bursa and claims sovereignty over Anatolia's heartland. His rule, however, lacks a stable foundation. Musa, possibly commanding a contingent on a separate front, is captured and taken east by Timur. He disappears into captivity, for now. Mehmed, safely ensconced in Amasya, was not present at Ankara. His absence becomes his greatest asset. He retains his army, his autonomy, and his opportunity. Each prince now holds a portion of a fractured empire. And now, with all pieces on the board, with the game set, the tournament begins. The Sultan is gone, the empire broken, but the game has only begun. 4 princes now stalk the ruins of Bayezid's dream. Süleyman, the silk-clad statesman in Edirne, weaving treaties like spider's silk. Isa, proud in Bursa, clutching the old heartland like a crown that will not stay on his brow. Musa, lost to Timur's chains, yet unbroken, a storm waiting beyond the horizon. And Mehmed, quiet in Amasya, watching, waiting, the wolf among jackals. They were brothers once. Soon they will be executioners. Part 4. The tournament begins. 1402 to 1403. Mehmed Çelebi, having returned to Bursa after Ankara, is the first to act. With his father captured and Süleyman fled to Rumelia, Isa proclaims himself Sultan of Anatolia. Bursa, once the crown jewel of the Ottomans, becomes his capital. He controls the old administrative core, but not for long. To the east, Mehmed Çelebi begins his quiet campaign. In Amasya, he moves with surgical precision. He sends diplomatic feelers across the region, gains the support of Turkmen beyliks disenchanted with Isa's weak leadership, and, crucially, offers incentives to former Bayezid loyalists. By the end of 1402, Mehmed controls Tokat and Sivas. His forces grow in discipline, even as his language remains calm, almost academic. In early 1403, the inevitable clash comes. Isa, confident in his seniority and in possession of Bursa, underestimates his younger brother. He marches eastward to crush Mehmed, but Mehmed's forces ambush Isa near Ulubad. The battle is decisive. Isa is defeated and flees, desperately seeking refuge. But flight offers little sanctuary. Within months, Isa is captured and executed, likely by forces loyal to Mehmed, though some accounts claim betrayal from within his own camp. Bursa, now stripped of its would-be sultan, falls to Mehmed. For the first time since Ankara, a single prince holds all of Anatolia, but peace is fleeting. Part 5. The fracture widens, 1403 to 1406. Across the straits in Edirne, Süleyman Çelebi watches with rising suspicion. He sees his youngest brother now commanding the very lands that once belonged to Bayezid, and fears a pincer move from the east. But Süleyman is no fool. He has not only troops, but also diplomats. In mid-1403, he sends envoys to Constantinople and signs treaties with the Byzantine Emperor Manuel II, promising lands and cities in exchange for naval support and political legitimacy. He even goes so far as to refer to the emperor as "my dear father," a gesture that raises eyebrows across the Muslim world. His court gleams with gold and Greek silks. His alliances multiply, but so do his enemies. The old Ottoman elite, especially conservative military leaders and scholars, begin to whisper that Süleyman is no longer a Ghazi, but a puppet of the Christians. Still, for now, his grip on Rumelia is firm. Meanwhile, Mehmed, now undisputed ruler of Anatolia, watches patiently. He does not move west, not yet. Instead, he consolidates, appointing governors, repairing bridges, and winning hearts. For the first time since Ankara, a single prince holds all of Anatolia. But peace is fleeting. And then Süleyman makes his move. Alarmed by Mehmed's rapid consolidation, Süleyman crosses from Rumelia back into Anatolia. What follows is the first direct clash between the two surviving powers. Near Bursa, the two brothers' forces engage, not only with swords, but with strategy. And in this theatre, Süleyman has a secret weapon, Çandarlı Ali Pasha. With his intricate knowledge of the Anatolian elite, Çandarlı deftly manipulates allegiances and offers safe passage to wavering beys. Spies feed disinformation into Mehmed's ranks. Supply chains are subtly disrupted, and in the fog of these maneuvers, Süleyman gains the upper hand, not through battlefield glory, but through bureaucratic chess. Mehmed is forced to pull back. It is not a rout, but a retreat, and it marks the beginning of a cold realization that defeating Süleyman means outwitting Çandarlı, a man who has ruled longer than any of them have fought. But history is always shifting, and the death of Çandarlı, still years away, will turn the tide. For now, a new player is returning to the stage. Released from Timur's captivity, Musa Çelebi lands back in Anatolia, and the tournament is about to become a war. Musa Çelebi, once presumed a pawn removed from the board, is now reintroduced. Musa does not land directly in Rumelia. His first instinct is to seek out Mehmed, the brother who still holds court in Anatolia. But Mehmed, already cautious, already calculating, sees in Musa a potential risk. Without territory, without a treasury, without a following, Musa is a wild card in every sense. So Mehmed, ever the strategist, gently redirects him, not with sword, but suggestion, to Rumelia. There Süleyman, still riding high on his recent success against Mehmed, sees an opportunity. Rather than treat Musa as a threat, Süleyman embraces him. Or so it seems. He appoints Musa as his subordinate governor of Western Rumelia, a move that keeps the returning prince close, but not too powerful. For a time, Musa plays the role assigned to him. But beneath the surface, resentment brews. He watches as Süleyman grows ever more entangled in Byzantine diplomacy, trading away Ottoman fortresses for imperial favour and calling Emperor Manuel the father. To Musa, a prince born and bred in the Ghazi tradition of frontier warfare, this is nothing short of apostasy. Meanwhile, back in Anatolia, Mehmed is watching all this with sharp, patient eyes. He strengthens his hold over central Anatolia, waits for Süleyman's inevitable overreach, and prepares. Because when brothers play at thrones, alliances last only as long as they are useful. The real war of the Interregnum is about to ignite. Thus begins a new Gambit. Part 6. Musa's Gambit. The Balkan flames ignite. 1406 to 1409. Rumelia, once Süleyman's jewel, now begins to flicker with rebellion. Musa, the supposed exile, arrives in the Balkans with a modest force and a mission: disrupt, divide, destabilize. What Mehmed expected was a nuisance. What he got was a wildfire. Musa wastes no time. In cities where Süleyman's loyalty is thin, he presents himself as the true Ghazi prince, a son of Bayezid, uncorrupted by Byzantine silk and compromise. He forges secret alliances with disaffected beys, plays on resentment among frontier warriors, and quietly builds his own power base. By 1407, Musa has gathered enough strength to pose a genuine threat. Skirmishes flare up from Kosovo to Ceres. Local Ottoman garrisons, unsure whom to follow, split. Süleyman responds with force, but his movements are sluggish, his court bloated with bureaucracy, his energy spent on diplomacy rather than discipline. And then the tide turns. In 1409, near Kosovo, Musa's forces deliver a stinging blow. It is not a full-scale victory, but a psychological one. Towns begin to declare for Musa. Süleyman's own lieutenants grow uneasy. Many of them, frustrated by his lavish court life and lack of military initiative, defect, either in silence or outright betrayal. His reputation as a decadent puppet of foreign powers only worsens. Meanwhile, Mehmed watches, still the master of Anatolia, as his western rivals weaken each other. The true civil war is now fully ablaze. Part 7. The Fall of Süleyman, a prince in tatters. By 1410, Musa is no longer just a nuisance. He's a rival claimant with momentum. He captures key cities along the Danube. Fortress after fortress switches sides. Süleyman, trying to salvage his rule, marches south. But it is too late. His army, once proud and disciplined, is now fractured and demoralized. And worst of all, the very man who once anchored his legitimacy, Grand Vizier Çandarlı Ali Pasha, is dead. Süleyman's grip on Rumelia weakens by the hour. Süleyman Çelebi's downfall did not come with the clash of swords or the charge of cavalry. No, his end was not forged on the battlefield. It was written in the slow, crumbling denouement of a broken reign. As Musa Çelebi's campaign spread across the Balkans, it was not merely steel that paved his path, it was story. Whispers travelled faster than messengers. Musa the just, Mehmed the rightful, Süleyman the tyrant. Süleyman, once hailed as a prince of splendour, had by now earned a darker reputation. His taxes were crushing, his military levies relentless, and his rule increasingly despotic. The people no longer sang his praises. They muttered his name like a curse. By late 1410, as Musa's army closed in on Thrace, Süleyman made his escape from Edirne under the cover of night. With him rode only a handful of loyal guards and a few sacks of gold, the last vestiges of royal dignity. His Majesty, once draped in silks and crowned by empire, now stumbled through forests and backroads as little more than a fugitive cloaked in dust and shame. In a quiet Thracian village, he stopped to rest. Exhausted, concealed, forgotten, or so he hoped. But fate, ever the cruel playwright, had other plans. The villagers recognized him, and then came one of history's most nauseating ironies. Driven by fear, or perhaps the glittering promise of Musa's reward, the villagers bound the former prince in chains. It was not a swift betrayal. His helpless stare, his whispered pleas made some hands tremble. But in the end, gold weighed more than guilt. The next day, an ox cart arrived at Musa's camp. Inside, hidden beneath a stained grain sack, lay Süleyman's severed head, still recognizable, still crowned with the shadow of what once was. Musa stared at it in silence, then spoke only this: "He was once my elder brother. Now he is a warning." But the tale does not end there. The villagers who betrayed Süleyman believed they had bought their safety. They were wrong. Musa was not in the habit of rewarding treachery, especially when it came packaged in brothers' blood. At dawn, his men rode in. The village was razed, homes burned, fields salted, wells choked. When the fire died and the smoke cleared, nothing remained, not even a name on a map. And thus, Musa inscribed a single-line proverb into the very stones of the Balkans: "Betrayal may serve you once, but trust, once lost, is lost forever." So ends the tale of Süleyman Çelebi. No tombstone bears his name, no minaret tells his story. His legacy lies only in ashes, and in the stench of a village that once dared to sell a prince. As for Edirne, it now belonged to Musa. With Süleyman's death, Musa Çelebi proclaims himself the ruler of all Rumelia. But as one brother falls, another sharpens his blade. Part 8. Musa the Tyrant, 1410 to 1412. At first, Musa rules with zeal. He rewards allies, punishes collaborators of Süleyman, and reinforces his image as a warrior king. But soon the zeal turns to suspicion, and suspicion to paranoia. Musa begins to see enemies everywhere, in nobles, scholars, even old comrades. Executions become frequent. His once noble crusade transforms into purges and cruelty. Even the Byzantine emperor, once courted by Süleyman, is now under siege. Musa's forces launch raids on Constantinople itself, turning diplomacy into open hostility. The result? Panic in the Balkans. Former allies turn away. Local lords rebel. Desperate, the Byzantines appeal to Mehmed in Anatolia for aid. And Mehmed, the youngest brother, the patient architect of survival, finally sees his moment. He crosses the straits. Part 9. The Battle of Brothers, Çamurlu, 1413. Mehmed lands in Rumelia with a disciplined Anatolian army, bolstered by Greek ships and Balkan defectors. His message is clear: unity, justice, and the end of tyranny. Cities open their gates. Veterans of Süleyman's army join him. Musa, defiant to the end, rallies his shrinking circle of loyalists and prepares for war. The Ottoman Interregnum, a brutal and chaotic decade of brotherly carnage, reached its climax on the muddy plains of Çamurlu in 1413, just south of Samokov, in present-day Bulgaria. The name, meaning muddy, would prove grimly prophetic. Mehmed Çelebi, now hardened by years of civil war, marched with a seasoned force drawn from Anatolia, loyal beys, and the crucial support of the Serbian despot, Stefan Lazarević. Musa Çelebi, holding Rumelia, had entrenched himself in Edirne and rallied his followers with zeal, portraying himself as the true Ghazi heir. But Musa's earlier brutality had left scars. His harsh treatment of beys and his scorched earth tactics had driven many to Mehmed's side. Even some of Musa's own commanders now viewed him with unease. As the armies met near Çamurlu, the battlefield itself became a swamp of blood and ambition. Musa, ever the fierce warrior, led his troops personally. Mehmed, in contrast, orchestrated the battle with cool precision, supported not just by Stefan Lazarević's heavy cavalry, but also by the political council of rising figures. One such figure was Çandarlı Ibrahim Pasha, son of the late Grand Vizier Çandarlı Halil Pasha. Though young, Ibrahim had already begun to wield influence, continuing his family's legacy of strategic brilliance. His council helped secure the loyalty of hesitant Rumelian commanders, tipping the balance in Mehmed's favor. The clash was thunderous. Musa's initial charge broke into Mehmed's lines, but the Anatolian ranks held firm. A well-timed flanking maneuver by Serbian cavalry shattered Musa's left wing. Encircled and bleeding, Musa refused to flee. Captured after the battle, Musa was brought before his brother. Mehmed, ever composed, gave the order. Musa was strangled, not in vengeance, but in grim necessity. The civil war, at last, was over. Mehmed Çelebi was now Mehmed I, Sultan of a reunified Ottoman Empire. In 1413, Mehmed Çelebi is crowned Mehmed I, the Sultan of a reunited Ottoman Empire. He does not inherit glory. He earns it. From the wreckage of civil war, he builds anew, re-establishing institutions, mending broken alliances, and calming the embers of rebellion. He restores what Bayezid had lost. Not just land, but legitimacy. But the scars remain. The interregnum is a trauma etched into the bones of the empire. A reminder that blood ties can also bleed dynasties dry. And yet, Mehmed turns the page. Under his steady hand, the Ottomans once again become a rising force. He is no conqueror like his father, nor a visionary like his son will be. But he is something equally vital: a restorer, a man who stitched a shattered realm back together with patience, wisdom, and steel.